TikTok's kind of one giant inside joke. And so if you're on the outside looking in, you're going to kind of crash and burn. But I think for us, it's understanding first, how your brand can fit on there, and then using the medium to tell your story. I kind of call it infotainment, the ability to build your brand and tell your story while also selling along the way. If you're not being entertaining or telling your story in a creative and unique way, that people are just going to zone out.
Q4 is the busiest time of year for e-commerce brands. And if there's one thing that rings true year in and year out, so you have to get your shoppers' attention quickly. SMS makes it easier than ever to connect with customers through their phones. Trusted by brands like Brooklinen, Native, FanJoy, and more, Postscript is the go-to text message marketing platform for brands on Shopify and Shopify Plus. Learn more and get started with a free 30-day trial at postscript.io. Welcome to another week's episode of the Messenger Mastermind podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jeremy Horowitz, and we have another great holiday episode today with an incredible guest who I'm super excited to dive into. He's working on a lot of really cool things. So I'm not going to ramble on. Let's get right into it. Let me introduce the VP of Marketing at Kizik, Brett Swenson. Brett, how's it going?
Doing awesome. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I love this time of year. I feel like everything is chaotic. Everybody's scrambling, but it's also that kind of pure emotional joy in all of the chaos. So before we dive into all the good stuff and what Kizik is doing for the holidays, can we just quickly, I always love to ask, how did you get into this crazy game of e-com?
I have kind of a non-traditional story, and I'll give you the quick version, but I actually started right out of high school doing wedding photography. So here in the state, weddings are pretty huge, and my brother started a business doing wedding photography, and I was never a huge fan of school. And so as soon as I could work, I wanted to work. And so I went with him, and we created the largest, essentially brand here in Utah that did wedding photography. I think at one point we had 250 weddings a year, something insane like that. It was just crazy. And so did wedding photography for about 10 years. And during that time, Facebook was kind of taking off and kind of getting up and rolling with how you could reach your customers. And so I got tasked with, kind of leading our marketing there. And so that's when I kind of started feeling like, hey, I have a sense for marketing and systems and organization and really, telling our story. And so I decided, in between there, I actually wanted to do personal training. So I got certified as a personal trainer and wanted to go into health and fitness, and quickly realized there was no money in being a personal trainer. And I thought, okay, how am I going to support, myself and let alone a family, when I get married? And anyway, I decided that I'll keep that as a passion, but said, hey, let's keep going with marketing. And so, long story short is I ended up at a digital agency, which was kind of my first stop in digital marketing, where I worked with enterprise clients, with SEO and PPC and you name it. And was there about a year and a half and decided I want to go in-house. And so that's when I, found out about Purple Mattress Company and took a shot there at selling mattresses, which I had no idea what they were doing, and didn't realize I had joined the beginnings of a rocket ship. And so I went over there to do email and marketing automation. So I let out, all of the efforts in, email and SMS and you name it. I think I was the 15th or 20th employee there. And so, that's kind of how I got started and fell in love with building brands and startups and marketing in general.
Yeah, I always love asking that question because everybody has a non-traditional background, and it's always something really interesting that's tangential. And then I was the expert in something digital marketing related, and how I kind of got thrown into the e-com role. So if anybody isn't familiar with Kizik and what you're working on now, do you want to just give the quick overview and the very high level of what Kizik is, where it is in the marketplace, and what you all are focusing on?
Yeah, I mean, we like to say that we're changing the way people put on their shoes. So we're a direct-to-consumer shoe brand with a twist. So our founder patented and invented ways that you could put on shoes without using your hands. So, think about a slip-on, but way better. You can get our shoes, and the only thing you have to do with your hands is take them out of the box. You put them on the ground, and then you can just step into them, and they slip on like a slipper, but fit, like a regular lace-up shoe. So it's. I think we have over 80 domestic and foreign patents, and we're really creating a whole new category of how to put on shoes, kind of the way that shoes should have always been, and we're having a blast.
I love that, and I love the concept because I definitely am someone who destroys the heels and the backs of my shoes because I was just like ramming my feet into them. That's super cool. So I know we're going to talk a lot about marketing. We're getting into the holidays. One thing that I would love to dive into first, just because I feel like it's very unique to talk to someone who truly rode a rocket ship from very, very early all the way up, was what was the just like craziest takeaway or learning from having that, like being very, very early at Purple and seeing that just absolute takeoff?
Oh man. I think, the biggest thing and the biggest takeaway for me was just, how you need to be careful with how fast you grow, if that makes sense. Like we experienced such fast growth that we almost, we didn't collapse or anything, but it started to become, we were growing so fast that we couldn't keep up. And that just created, obviously supply chain issues, but it also created, issues internally with our marketing and how fast we were trying to grow and keep up with that and hire people to keep up with that growth. So it was interesting to be like, we were chasing this growth and, that idea of the rocket ship and growing so quickly. But I think just being prepared for that growth, if you can, was something that I kind of at least started to think about as I moved throughout my career of like, okay, if we start to see some of these signals again, how do we really put things in place to allow for that? But I mean, it was just during the time, it was just so fun and exciting to see that growth and to be a part of it, that you figure it out as you go and you get through it and ultimately you come out better for it. But there were some stressful times, as we started to 4 or 5x, and then month over month you're doubling and spends just getting bigger and teams the team's not getting that much bigger and I think we became experts at the customer service side of things from a marketing perspective. So really reaching out and setting expectations and making sure that we were being overly communicative with people that were buying mattresses that maybe we couldn't ship when we wanted to ship them, and just dealing with all that growth was just a really fun, stressful, crazy time.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things of like, I'm not sure if I ever want to do this again, and then you kind of miss it when you're out of it. So I would love to. So then the transition to Kivik, how did you prepare for the growth at Kivik? Kind of like having that big lesson coming out of Purple.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I came over to Kizik, we had hoped for, you kind of hope for the growth that you want to see. And so I think the biggest thing was putting the right team in place and luckily, we had some, so my CMO over at Purple actually is a CMO here at Kizik. His name is Alex MacArthur, and he's the one that kind of brought me over here. And so I think we had a good understanding of how we wanted to build out a team, and if we did see the growth that we were anticipating, and we had some of the playbook, right, that we had seen work before that we wanted to try and see if we could recreate. And so I think we had some of those learnings that we could pull from and have pulled from to say, hey, this is starting to feel familiar, or we're starting to see some of that growth that we've seen before, and here's how we addressed it then, and here's how with advertising platforms and channels and opportunities changing. There's still a similar way that we like to market. It still holds true today, and so I think that's been really helpful for us to understand some of the checkpoints throughout our growth and check in and say, okay, this feels familiar. Let's pivot and go this way, or let's double down. like maybe we've done in the past, and then put some things in place that we know will help with those. And so I think, yeah, just having that experience to fall back on has been really helpful.
Yeah, that's super cool. It's kind of like a gang gets back together because then you probably don't have to go through a lot of the same, like what tech stack are we using? What playbook do we want to run? What's our sales motion? Like you have all of that built in. So something you just mentioned, I think is actually really good to kind of transition into the holiday portion of this, is being very proactive on the marketing side. And I think everybody's well aware it's just going to be a complete nightmare on the ops and the fulfillment side of the business. And I feel like a lot of conversation I'm having recently with like Eli from Olipop and Nick Sharma from Sharma Brands is about like where does CX live in the org? So especially this holiday season, how do you think about that blend of customer experience, customer support, and marketing? Like how should those teams play together, or is it just one big team?
Yeah, for us, they are separate teams, but it's constant communication, and I honestly feel like we could do a lot better at just we've grown so fast that sometimes you're all about, okay, what is our customer acquisition strategy, and how are we keeping our retention efforts up, and what does lifetime value look like, that you kind of forget about those things. You forget about the customer experience side when in our case shoes go out the door, right? And luckily we have a really awesome customer experience team that will gently remind us, when we're lacking on our communication, that like, hey, we need to make sure we're staying on top of the way that our messages match, and what we're telling to the customers through marketing is matching what they're talking to them about, especially in a D2C world where in footwear, where returns are a big part of the game. Making sure that sizing and fit, and can I wear these outside? Do I have to try these on inside? And the way that we just communicate just feels cohesive. And I think that's one thing that's really important for brands now is that when you go from, the email or the text that you get from, the marketing side of things, to when they chat back in or email back in and talk to, kind of a completely different team in our scenario, that it feels cohesive and like everyone's on the same page. Because I think that's one thing that can fall apart really quickly unless you have some systems and some semblance of cohesive messaging, and that takes planning and meeting together and just continuing to stay on the same page. So again, we're not perfect at it, but we're definitely feel like we're separate teams, but also the same team when it comes to customer delight and satisfaction. And we actually track that in-house with NPS scores. So we kind of have our overall NPS score, but we also break that down into department NPS and how's marketing, delivering on, surprise and delight moments along with, our customer experience team. How are they kind of picking up the baton and carrying that through? And so I think that's really helped us have a commonality and a common goal where we can all just, we're all pulling in the same direction, and we know where one leaves off, the other can kind of pick that up and create that just holistic, cohesive, experience.
Definitely. It sounds like there's enough separation that everybody can be like, the two teams can hold each other accountable, but still everybody delivers on the pieces that they need to and work together where they do. So that's super interesting. So what I'd love to do is just dive into like, what are you the most excited about this holiday season? Like what's interesting? Are there any new tests that you guys have been running to gear up that you think is going to be a really big game changer this year?
Yeah. Well, we're actually literally right into the thick of things of launching some connected TV and some linear TV spots. In fact, they're probably going to go live next week. That's something that I'm just super intrigued and interested about. We have a new hero video, at least what we call it internally. It's kind of our big content piece for the year. That's we started filming 3 or 4 months ago. That's just wrapping up, and we're launching here in the 1st of November. So we're super excited. What I kind of call it infotainment. The ability to build your brand and tell your story while also selling along the way with education and your value props. But we really believe that if you're not being entertaining or telling your story in a creative and unique way, that people are just going to zone out. And so we've really worked hard at creating those moments and pieces of content that drive not only acquisition and build the brand, but are just entertaining. And so I'm really excited because I think that could be something that reaches a whole new set of consumers for us. Outside of what we're doing on our paid efforts and on social. So that launches hopefully next week.
That's awesome. I've heard that come up, and it seems to be bubbling up a lot. So is that like Hulu, Roku, TV, and YouTube, or are there any other big placements that you all are very excited about?
Yeah. So definitely those on the connected side of it, and then we're going to try some linear, which is kind of your traditional, channel lineup that you'd find on a cable package. So we're gonna test our way into it and see again if we can take what we've learned, on the what we've been doing on paid social and other efforts, and see if we can find some of those winners that translate over to a 30 or a 60-second spot that we run, and so we're excited about the opportunity to just continue to scale even more, and I'd say we wouldn't have even thought about doing something like this until we felt like we've kind of narrowed in on our core messaging and what we find is resonating with people. And then we just wanted to find a way to tell it in a different way, so I'm really excited to see how those play out, and as much as we can just reach new eyeballs. So
yeah, it's very cool. I thought about this a lot also, of like, it's almost like you use paid socials as you're just testing iterative what really works, what can we graduate out that we know will have that broader appeal, that we can run something that is more, where I would say brand building, and I'm sure there's still a sales component to it, but very like wide reach. So how did you determine where were you like, okay, we're confident that this works now, that we are willing to invest in that bigger lift? Was it a certain amount of sales? Was it a certain amount of just like, you just had that like confidence that this was working? Like what helped you determine to make that next jump up?
Yeah. I think a combination of a lot of different things, along the way, but for sure, we've really, over the past 18 months, flipped our brand on its head. So, when we started out, we were a very, 55 plus, brand, in terms of demographic. We were, it was just, when you think about putting your shoes on without using your hands, and easy on, easy off shoes, with the simplest thing to think of is maybe someone in your life that really needs it, right? Like an aging parent or someone with, a disability or, pregnancy, just different things like that. And what we really started with was that 55 plus demographic that just needed it for one reason or another, Parkinson's or diabetes, right? And so we really felt like there was so much more potential for the brand that we spent literally, the last, 18 months, and I think we've narrowed in over the last 6 months, but just trying to really understand who the consumer is at the time that was buying, but also where we could expand and where we felt like our shoes could fit, both as we changed our styles, but as we changed our messaging. And so we really took a more broad approach and a more approachable feeling to the brand, so that, anyone from, the elder aging demographic to someone down to, a 21-year-old felt like they could fit and be a part of our brand. And so that's taken a lot of work. And I think over the time we've honed in on our messaging and more of a convenience-based messaging, which has allowed us to just, we've 6-7x'd over the last year, just by, again, a lot of work, but really changing our message. And so I think as we started to test that on our paid channels and test different ways that we talked about things, and the way that we approached those even different niche demographics, like I mentioned, pregnancy, that came up not by us kind of going down that path, but a lot of users started to reach out and say, hey, this would be great for my wife or my daughter or whoever it may be. She's X amount of months pregnant and she can't bend over anymore. And so we've just kind of found the way that they were talking about it through their lens and adapted some of that messaging. And then, we've come out with, again, more of a general broad message that feels like it's reaching those with kind of that, oh, I didn't ever think about it that way, that aha moment. And then, so we don't have to go so niche as we talk broadly, and then people will kind of self-select, oh, this could be great for me. I'm pregnant, or I'm maybe a little bit overweight and I can't bend over like I used to, or whatever it may be. People are kind of self-selecting and filling in like, these will be perfect for me. And anyway, that's what we've seen, and we're kind of taking that convenience message and just telling it in unique ways. And so that's where we've seen and got the confidence to go towards some channel expansion.
Very cool. And I feel like throughout that process, you navigated the most difficult problem every scaling ecom business has of, we found an incredible use case for a niche. It really, really works. How do we traverse, I think the classic term is crossing the chasm, but how do we get to that bigger market appeal? And how do we maybe give up some of the things and the messaging and the processes that were like home runs for us to have that broader appeal? So like, what was that process like? Like, how did you convince the team or work with everybody to say, we're going to try this and we're going to make this big leap to go to more of that broad-based messaging that has that larger appeal?
Those were some interesting, closed door discussions that we had with people that, especially senior leadership that had been here and kind of had seen, some of that traction take off with a certain demographic. But we just, we did, again, a lot of testing, right? So before we even, about a year ago, we launched kind of our first, staple hero campaign where, we talked about hands-free in a way that was broader reaching. But before that, we did 6 to 8 iterations on just small little quick and dirty tests around, more of a broad message. And so we wanted to prove it out first, but we felt like, everyone's ambitions and aspirations for Kizik and this hands-free movement was much bigger than just, this part of the population that was maybe aging America. And so I think we had buy-in from leadership to say, hey, we really think this can be, a game changer in the shoe market. And the question was, how do we get there? And for us, the first thing we had to look at was, well, we can't just talk to this group of people and exclude everyone else, because, you start thinking about kids and their parents, and then all the people we've talked about before. We have to find a way to reach those people, and we'll never do it if we can't step back and talk broadly to those people. So, a lot of testing and a lot of, we did put spend behind several different things that would work slightly, and then we'd find a way to tweak and then try again. And then we just continued to build out those personas and said, okay, this is where we're aiming, and let's go. And, credit to our footwear team too, and the design team to take that and kind of the personas that we put together. In fact, one of them was called Lulu Lisa, right? Which was like that maybe 35 to 45-year-old person that was wearing Lululemon, right? Kind of the ultimate casual dress that we felt like our shoes would work for people that just want comfort. They want, they want a good looking shoe, and they want the ability to have, convenience in their lives. And so we pushed those out there and said, hey, let's revamp the brand and our product to really match, what we're seeing working. And we just went all in. So, and we've just seen, exponential growth from that.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's always great to see those like quick and dirty tests. You prune and groom, figure out what works, continue to invest, and then see that really take off. And I mean, I'd be remiss to not ask about TikTok. I feel like everybody is focusing on this, and everybody is like, how do we make it work the best this year and for this holiday season? So I know that you all are very big on it, and I know that you're very bullish on the channel. What are some things that you've seen just be very, very effective? And also, like, how do you just manage the channel that seems to be so volatile?
Yeah, TikTok's kind of a sleeper. I mean, I know the brands are trying to figure out their place on TikTok, right? And some of my team members make fun of me too because I don't know what like the latest trend is, and I'll just try and act like I know what they're talking about is some new dance or there's some song, and I'm like, what? Why are they lip syncing that and their voices don't match? And they're like, well, that's part of the trend, and like, okay. But I think for us, it's understanding first, how your brand can fit on there, and then again, using the medium to tell your story that really resonates with the platform. So for us, it's been a shift on the type of content that we've typically produced for our other channels. It's taking a step back and examining, okay, if this is how we talk on Instagram or Facebook, how do we need to talk on TikTok? And it's just a completely different way that we've approached it. We've again tried to go more of the humor approach and infotainment again approach where we're telling our story. But I think for us, managing that channel is really finding someone that can help you navigate. Levi, who's on our team here, he put it best. He said, TikTok's kind of one giant inside joke. And so if you're on the outside looking in, you're going to kind of crash and burn. So you got to find ways to get on the inside and understand the inside jokes that are going on, and then say, okay, where does our content and where can our brand live in there? And then once you find a little bit of traction, you can start to put some money behind some of those ads and start to scale them and really find some new eyeballs that aren't on, your traditional, Facebook or Instagram channels, especially the younger demographic that's kind of, they've migrated off of some of those channels. And so, yeah, I think it's again, comes down to finding your voice and finding someone that can speak that and bring that across. And then that's a recipe for some success right there.
Yeah, definitely. The inside joke is a good analogy because I feel like I'm definitely on the outside for TikTok. But I have two follow-up questions because I think there's two interesting paths there. So the first one would be, it seems like you're focusing a lot on the paid side of the platform. Are you doing a lot on the organic side, or is it really more of just this is a great distribution channel for our ads?
Yeah, we started more on the paid side just because we felt like there was some opportunity there to repurpose some content, but we really are, over the last 30 days, we brought on some new team members and we're focusing on the organic side because I think, you can see some of the brands that are just really doing it well, right? They haven't lost, they're not just on there making random videos and kind of feel like time sucks, but they're finding their place within different cultural trends and elements that are going on that they can weave themselves into. And I think that's how you really build a brand and a sustainable company, so that, when you see a dip in some of your performance through your paid efforts, that you still have a brand that people are talking about and that is worth, people sharing and right, referring, being the ultimate word of mouth conversion for you. So I think, for us, it's we want to continue to feed the beast, which is, our paid efforts, but we really want to build our brand and have our brand voice show through. And so, we'll still heavily focus on the paid side and create content that feels a little bit more, salesy, for lack of a better term, but we really want to just feel culturally relevant because we've kind of seen that tipping point over the last while where, people start to feel like there's some FOMO, right? Like everyone's talking about your brand. How do I not know about it? Or what am I missing out on? And I think some of these areas like TikTok and even on LinkedIn, we've really seen that kind of surge of Kizik chatter, which has been really something that we're doubling down on. So
interesting. Wait, hold up for a second. Are you putting paid money on LinkedIn to sell Kizik shoes?
No, so no paid there. Just some organic. Just we're trying to be more engaged and more more human, right? I think a lot of people go on to LinkedIn and you can see kind of the same posts over and over again, but we've seen that like, hey, there's, especially where our shoes have a tech element, right? Like we have, again, a patented tech that goes into our shoes that, especially here in Silicon Slopes, where there's a lot of SaaS companies and tech, and we've kind of found that the way that we can talk about it on LinkedIn and just spread the word there, that it's kind of a little bit of an untapped potential where it starts to spread via word of mouth. And we just over and over again we hear people just saying, hey, I feel like I have Kizik FOMO, like what are these? And it's just bubbling up more and more, and I think that's just a sign for us that we're on the right track of how we're communicating and bringing a little bit more humor and lightheartedness to, LinkedIn and obviously, TikTok and other channels where we can scale more. But it's just interesting to see, when you can be a little bit more human and break the mold, that you can find some wins in unexpected places.
Yeah, definitely. That's just a good recipe for any business that you're in, like being a human and doing something novel and just different from everybody else. So, we probably have you back on in like a year when you got some data behind like how successful that LinkedIn organic strategy was, because that would be very unique. I haven't seen too many other brands do that. But my other question would be, how do you just create all this content? Like you've got TikTok with organic and paid, you have all the other paid social channels, you're doing connected TV. Like, do you just have a massive content team that's just constantly producing all of these different assets that you need?
We have a massively talented content team. I wouldn't say we have a massive team. So we have a combination of in-house, and we set aside some of our budget each year and each quarter for maybe a bigger piece of content that we will outsource through an agency. So whether that be, a local agency here or, working with content creators on different platforms. So we've reached out and tried to really build a content strategy where we can get these content creators on TikTok or someone that we just see on Instagram or wherever it may be that are just creating killer content. But for their personal brand, they just know how to tell a story, and we'll reach out and try and create some type of partnership or deal where we can say, hey, help us tell the Kizik story through your lens. And so, we've over the past 6 months, I think we've signed on about 25 content creators that we will work with on a monthly or bi-monthly basis to create content for us. We're on kind of that quick and dirty, shot on an iPhone, really native to the platform. And then during that time, we'll do, like when we do a shoe launch internally, we'll have our internal team obviously take care of that. And they're just super talented. Blake Brown, who's our creative director, has a ton of experience with video, and he and his team are just, they're amazing and can kind of crank things out pretty quickly. So we're always cranking out new contact internally, and then, we'll outsource and get a big piece, which is what we have coming out here next week. So, I think a combination of both. And I know not all brands have that kind of, maybe a budget to plan for that. But I think as you start to kind of, take an approach where you're doing things in-house and maybe you are shooting on an iPhone, but then as you start to level up and hone in on your messaging, then take a big swing and, go to an outside agency that comes in and really looks at what you're doing and can tell your story a little bit differently. And that's what we're trying to do as we grow, is just tell things a little bit differently to try and keep expanding our views and how people may see, hands-free shoes. So it's fun. It's fun to have that diversity and variety of thought and content types.
Yeah, because then you get the extreme experience and expertise from the in-house team, and then all the fresh take of what sounds like a pretty rotating group of content creators, a bunch of different landscapes. So it's very interesting to see how you're blending that all together. So my one kind of question wrapping up the holiday portion of this would be, we got 1 week left. What's one thing we can deploy that you think is going to be really, really high value for everybody going into BFCM?
So one thing that we can deploy before that, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you got 1 week to deploy. One last thing. What's your last minute rush? What's your thing that like we've got to get out before holiday hits?
Oh man. I mean, for us, we're actually in kind of a period of time where we're launching new styles and new colorways, and so for us, yeah, it's just kind of focusing on building as big of an audience as we possibly can now, which that's kind of a no brainer. But we're just really trying to get all of our product out there so people can see what our selection is before they make the decisions on what they're going to buy for the year. And so that's what we're doing. And my advice would be, yeah, make sure you kind of lay out what consumers can expect before they've kind of locked in on maybe what they're shopping for. But yeah, those are the things we're focused on right now. And then just getting ready to gear up.
I love that. Like, right, everybody will be happy. Like, hey, here's a broad array of products. Like, go check it out. It's a great excuse to reach out to your customers, especially in something like an email that week before, just to drum up site traffic, fill those retargeting funnels. And it's so simple. And I think it's so valuable because I think a lot of people don't do it. They're like, we've got to save it for the big promo. We've got to get people, but they forget that you have to get people excited to buy something before they're willing to action the promo.
Yeah. And for us, we've come out with, I think over the last 4 months, we've came out with 4 completely different styles of shoe. So we have just a lot going on. And then within that, there's, 6 to 8 different colorways of each one. So we really wanted to just say, hey, I know we've thrown a lot at you over the last 4 months, but here's kind of our new lineup. And as you go into the holiday, we're going to be dropping some new colors and stuff like that. But this is kind of, lay it out there and make it easy for people to see, okay, I like that style. I may not like that one as much, but, I forgot about that one, right? Because that was 3 to 4 launches ago, and just making sure people have a view of what that is, so that, like you mentioned, you can build those audiences and really, remarket and hit those people up that have wallets open and are ready to spend. So, yeah, it's important for us.
Yeah, you never know. They may add that second, third, fourth product because they saw it and they're now thinking but they have that strong intent to buy. So I know you're incredibly busy, so we don't want to keep you too long. So I have a couple questions I love asking everybody just to get their take. And honestly, some of this is just shamelessly just feed some of my reading and other things that I'm looking at. So my first question to you, kind of the quick fire round to wrap things up, would be, what's one piece of content you recommend everybody consume? It can be any type of content, book, blog, podcast, video, cool thing that you saw. The only rule is it can't be your own.
You know what? Actually, I think it's been 7-8 months since I've read over this, but Dave Gephardt, he has a copywriting. It's a paid program that you can get from him that just talks about copywriting and short choppy copy and the way that he just what he employed at Drift, and I would suggest that for anyone that is just looking to level up copy, like I have been over the last while, just trying to wear multiple hats and improve copy. I'd recommend going to check out what he has, because I think there's some nuggets in there that I haven't heard anywhere else.
Yeah, definitely. Dave was an awesome guest on the podcast. I second endorse that. I went through that course also. Very, very helpful for no matter where you are in the ecosystem. Okay, so question number 2, jumping back to Brett, who was just starting in ecom. What's one lesson that you would impress upon yourself back then that if you had to do it all over again, you would make sure you got right the second time?
Oh man, that's a great question. I think
I tried.
I think having conviction in your ideas and kind of believing in and trusting your gut, I think, is something that we overlook a lot as marketers. There's data everywhere, and that's, I look at it daily, and we're constantly evaluating and trying to improve upon those. But I think if we take our gut and our intuition out of things, then we lose a big part of what marketing really is, which is understanding human behavior and psychology. And so I think do your research and trust the numbers, but also trust your gut, and don't be afraid to maybe move away a little bit from the numbers and lean into your gut a little bit more. Because I think when I've done that, and and looked back on my career and maybe opportunities where I haven't. I think I maybe missed some opportunities to really not only improve personally, but also maybe some bigger opportunities for the company I was at to really just take that next step and who knows, you kind of look back and say, oh, well, I wonder what would happen if I would have done that idea that maybe I held back. And so I'm just trying to do that more, is trusting my gut.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. I feel like data driven turns into data obsessed way too quickly when it's really just supposed to be there to inform you, just constantly refine that process. So I love that. Okay. Next question is, if you were sitting in my seat and you were interviewing Brett, what's the one thing I missed? What should we have talked about?
I actually I want to give a shout out just to mental health, because it's something that's, I think, just important. All of us right now, this time of year, and over the last few years, is just focusing on your mental health and making sure that it's okay to not be okay sometimes. And for me, that it's been a big part of my life and my mental health journey and struggles that I've had, and especially in a growing, with a growing brand, or really any brand, right, that puts stress on you day in and day out, is, I'd say, communicate, and remember it's okay to not be okay sometimes, and focus on your mental health. Again, that's a little bit away from what we were talking about today, but I just felt like, that's something that is top of mind for me and has been through my life. And so if anyone, wants to talk mental health, or, just maybe needed to hear, like, hey, it's okay to not be okay today. Hopefully that's helpful. So
I'm very, very glad I asked that question, because this time of year, I feel like everybody's just like, we have to get it done no matter what. And sometimes it's just too overwhelming. So I'm very glad you also brought that answer. Second to last question for you. Who's someone that we should have on the podcast that you think would be a great conversation?
Oh, that is a good question. I think, a shameless plug, for a local brand here, but there's a couple brands that I think have really interesting growth stories and are doing some cool stuff. There's one called Pillow Cube here locally.
I get their ads all the time.
Yeah. So Jay, who's the CEO of there, is really interesting. And then, I'm trying to think, Roan Clothing is a really interesting brand as well. And their mission and, what they're striving to do, is really interesting. So maybe reaching out to the guys at Roan to come tell you about their story would be cool too.
Okay. I'll have to add them to the list. And last question for you. If someone wants to learn more about yourself or Kizik, where should they head?
Yeah, so Kizik is just KIZIK.com. And you can check us out there and see what we have to offer. And then I'm pretty much just Brett Swenson everywhere. So LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter. That's SWENSEN. So yeah, I'd love to connect with more, founders or growth mindset people that are building and doing some awesome stuff. So please hit me up.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate it, Brett. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to another week's episode of the Messenger Mastermind podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with another e-commerce marketer. And always let us know what you think down in the comments below. Also, don't forget to subscribe. If you're looking for cutting edge tactics and the resources that we rely on to run our businesses, sign up for our newsletter. We'll include a link down below. As always, stay confident, connect with your customers, and keep crushing it.